Hello everyone, welcome to the course Disability Studies in India, Historical, Social and Culture Perspectives. So the module is Introduction to the Course Methodology, Definition and Key Concepts. As you notice, I am talking about the basic definitions and terms associated with disability studies. For example, in the last lecture, lecture number 4, I was talking about what disability is, what handicap is and what impairment is. As I discussed, impairment simply refers to a body limbs loss, as a medical institution have defined or designed a body or whatever you say. For example, if you don't have a limb or if you have a vision loss, you will fall under the category of impairment. All right. So that was a basic definition of impairment. So in that lecture, I also talked about disability. So as I was talking in last lecture, that disability is about that how the impaired body, if not able to access a particular structure because of its being impaired and the infrastructure is not accessible, it results into the disability, right? So two things are necessary for body to be called disabled. One, there should be impairment, and second, because of the impairment, if someone is not able to inaccessible infrastructure, then it is called disabled, right? As an example, I told you, let's say for example, that if a person is sitting on the 3rd stories and he is not able to climb on those 3 stories because they do not have ramps or elevators, but rather they have a stairs. So it is because of the impairment. Now the person is not able to access that building. Two things come together and it resulted into the disability. So as you see that most of the time activists and academicians, they both challenge this notion and they say that if there is a accessible infrastructure, impaired body will not be a disabled body, right? So they will be able to access that and they will be as so-called normal as other bodies are. So this is what the definition of disability was. And then third was handicapped, right? So in handicap, I tried to explain that if a person is not able to perform any cultural role means role of a father, role of a mother, role of a brother, sister, so on and so forth, because of the impairment, then it falls under the category of handicap, right? So handicap means two things. One, due to impairment, you are not able to perform cultural roles. So when the two come together, it gives a genesis to handicap body, right? However, as I say, that handicap is something very negatively used. So people have stopped using it, but again, when you are using it, make sure that you know the context in which you are using it. And even if you are reading it, when you are writing, you are speaking anywhere, so you understand the basic difference between these terms so that you do not confuse your audience and you do not confuse yourself as well. I also explained these 3 terms in the last lecture so that it is often used everywhere, often asked, so you can be clear. All right, my dear friends, so let's come back to the lecture number 5, where I am going to talk about the key concepts. The very purpose of continuing with the concepts is because I have seen my students, friends, people using the term synonymously. Let's say for example, they don't know the difference between, not all, some of our students. So I have prepared these slides and lecture for the convenience of my other fellow friends who have a problem in understanding the differences between different terms. Right. So for example, when I am talking about diseased body, I am not talking about disability. I am talking about disabled body, I am not talking about disease. So these disability and disease, they two are different, right? I am just giving you an example. So let's say freak is a different meaning and freak has different understanding. Access had different way to look at it in terms of disability studies, right? So the very reason why I am bringing this key concept is to introduce you these notions, this way of looking at disability studies, and also to have a wider understanding of these terms. So these are the important way to look at key concepts. All right. So let's say for example, we have the first term is called access, right? What is access? There is a book I have written, I don't want to advertise myself, but just to tell you that the Lexicon of Disability Studies, the Lexicon of Disability Studies is my book. and in that books I have explained all the terms, and the purpose of explaining all those terms was so that it is convenient and useful for my students, friends and other people who are interested in disability studies. So, access in relation to disability refers to the ability of a people with disability to engage in a society without barriers, right. Look at this all words which are which has to be scrutinized and which has to be carefully understood, right, which means to say that everyone should be able to engage in society fully. And how you can engage in the society fully? Let's say for example, if I want to have a meeting and I want to discuss some important pertinent issues that concerns everyone, and I deliberately kept the meeting on in a building which is not accessible by people with disabilities, right. So, how will he be able to engage in the decision making process, right? Think about it. So, it includes physical access to buildings, it includes communication access to information. Think about it, I have deliberately kept it separate. Communication access to information, technological access to digital resources, right. Let's say for example, if I am not giving you digital access, I don't have equitable society, right. I don't have equal opportunity, I am not giving equal opportunities to everyone, because I see that the certain devices are meant for those who are not impaired. Then can we say that are we giving equal platform? My simple answer would be no. So, social access to community activities, economic access to employment, right, educational access to learning environment, and legal access to rights and protections. So, here you see that what I mean to say that access does not only mean one way of access or just giving one access to something. That is not true. Access simply implies that he should have a communication access, he should have legal access, he should have technological access, he should have educational access, he should have all kinds of access that everyone has, right. So, here you see, then only you can have a accessible environments. Don't say me that this building is disabled friendly by just providing ramp and elevators. Alright. So, keep this in mind to understand what I mean by access. So, it emphasizes inclusivity, then only we can have an inclusive society, right, and the removal of obstacles that hinders participations. So, remove all kind of hindrance that do not let people with disability to participate or engage in the society fully. Think about it, right. So, first thing is remove all the hindrances, and there is an emphasis on inclusivity as well. So, this is a very significant and important concept to talk about inclusive society, right. You cannot talk about inclusive society until and unless you know what access means, alright. Coming to the second term is called accommodation, right. We all know what accommodation literally means, but accommodation refers to modification or adjustment made to enable people with disabilities to participate fully in various environments. So, what this include? This include physical changes, this include assistive technologies, this also include flexible work arrangements, educational supports and communication adaptations, all aimed at removing barriers and fostering inclusivity, right. So, it does not mean that 10 to 5 if you have kept the timing and you say that, oh, it is for everyone, I am not discriminating anyone. No, you are discriminating people with disabilities, because there are certain bodies which are not being accommodated in the given time frame, because that given time frame, that is called 10 to 5, is more, it is enabling people without disabilities. So indirectly you are discriminating, you understand? So I mean, as I say that don't create atmosphere and which looks like it inclusive but actually is a discriminatory, right? So this is why I wanted to put emphasis on what I mean by accommodation, right? Let's move to the next term, and next term is aesthetics. That is a very, very culturally loaded and culturally nuanced complex concept. So you can also refer to Raymond Williams' keywords. That's a very interesting and engaging book. I would recommend and suggest you all to read this book, which is called Keywords by Raymond Williams, because that will give you also a nice understanding to understand aesthetics. But here what aesthetics means is the branch of a philosophy that explores the nature of beauty, art and taste, right, as well as the creation and appreciation of a beauty in various forms, right. It examines how we perceive and interpret artistic expressions, including visual arts, musics and designs. So aesthetics also considers cultural context, emotional responses and standards of a beauty that influence our experiences and judgment of art and nature. Let me ask you a fundamental question. I think then the definition will be more clear to you. Suppose if I ask, right, what is how a body look beautiful? What kind of a body looks beautiful? You will understand that what I am referring to, right? How to make, have you seen anyone keeping disabled bodies posters in the room, right? Not the god and goddesses, right? So here you see what I am trying to refer to. What kind of a body is appreciated or what kind of a body is appreciable? It again depends on the culture, right? What is the notion of a beauty? What kind of a beauty is appreciated? What is the notion of art? How it looks? What kind of beautiful, right? When we say it's a beautiful painting, when we say it's a beautiful painting, what we mean by this? Oh yes, I am looking good, right? When you appreciate someone, what qualities you want to see to appreciate someone, right? Think for a second. So that is why I have written how we perceive and interpret artistic expression, how we perceive, because our ocular responses are also culturally colored, right? Our emotional responses are also culturally motivated. We feel like killing grass, insects and all, right? But when it comes to butterflies, we don't like it killing it, you know. How come? Killing is killing, right? But you see how aesthetically we differentiate that some killing is morally bad and some killing is morally good. So it all depends on how aesthetic understanding we have. What is the understanding of aesthetic we have in a particular culture, right? So moving ahead from aesthetics, let's come to the affect. Affect refers to the experience of feeling or emotions often linked to how people respond to stimuli in their environment. In physiology, in psychology and humanities, it encompasses a range of emotional responses, including joy, sadness, anger and anxiety. So affect can influence behavior, decision making and social interaction. It is also a key concept in understanding how emotions shape our experiences and relationship, particularly in fields like affect theory, which examines how emotions are expressed and interpreted in social and cultural context. All right. How do we get affected? Right? What affect us? What, when we say, oh, after watching this beautiful performance, we are moved. So, beautiful performance goes to the aesthetic, we are moved is goes to affect, right? So, how when we see, how do we feel pity on someone, right? Or how do we appreciate? How do we feel joy and sorrow for the same kind of art or different kind of art? What creates, how do we get affected by watching something? Where does it come from? Right? So, affect refers to the experience of feeling or emotions. Right? How people respond to stimuli, this is all related to disability, because it depends how our experiences are shaped and in what relationship we are. Alright, so there is an entire affect theory to understand this. I would suggest you to read more on it. Then we have a deformity. Alright, so deformity refers to an abnormality or irregularity in the shape or structure of a body part. It can be congenital, which means present at birth, or acquired, developing due to injury, disease or environmental factors. So, deformities can affect various parts of the body, including bones, limbs, facial features, and may range from mild to severe. In medical and social context, deformities can carry implication for function, mobility and aesthetic perception, often influencing how people are perceived and treated in society, right? So, here you see there are sometimes deformed body is also considered as a disabled body, because they both have to face the stigma of the society. Because there is something wrong with the body, if there is a facial deformity, if there is something is on the face or some way twisted, turned, curved, right, or there is some scars on the body visible. So, people call it deformed, and the moment they call deformed, they tag it with disability, but understand they both are very different. As I explained to you what I mean by disability, it has to first impaired, because a deformed body will not have a problem if what kind of deformity depends, right. So, a deformed body to be disabled means it has to be impaired and problem in accessing the infrastructure, social infrastructure. Then only deformed body will be called a disabled body. Is that clear? Right? So, that is why I am bringing these definitions. So, we are clear about what means what is the difference between these two. So, deformities can carry implication for function, mobility, aesthetic perception, often influencing how people are perceived and treated in society. Moving ahead, let us talk about disease now. Disease, right? Disease refers to a pathological condition of a bodily part, an organism or system resulting from various factors, including infection, genetic disorder, environmental stressors or lifestyle choices. It is characterized by specific symptoms and signs that can affect physical or mental health. Disease can be acute, which means short term, or chronic, which means long lasting, and can impact various systems in the body, leading to dysfunction and impaired quality of life. So, here you see the last line, disease may lead to impairment. Sometimes impairment may also lead to disease, but they two are not the same, because one may lead to another. It is not like you call impaired body a diseased body. If you only see that only when you see impairment is resulting in the disease, coming to the category of disease. You understand? So, let us say for example, I am sick today, I am not feeling well, so I will not climb, I will not be able to climb third stories, but tomorrow I may be fine, so called, right. I took medicines, I can work now, I can go anywhere. The same building which was not accessible to me for a day before is accessible to me now. So, that is not true in terms of impairment, only if there is some prosthetics or some extra additional help that you notice. Alright. So, this is a difference between, because it is referring to pathological conditions of a bodily part, and that is what disability studies constantly fight for, that do not call a disabled body diseased body. Diseased body has to go to the medical institution, not the disabled, but yes, it depends what kind of pain they are experiencing. In that case, they have to go and talk to the doctor. That is true. I will talk about all these nuances further. Divyang. Divyang is a term used in India to refer people with disabilities. It combines Divya, which means divine or exceptional, and Ang meaning body or limb, suggesting that people with disabilities possess unique strength and qualities. The term aims to promote a positive perspectives on disability, emphasizing the potential and abilities of people rather than focusing solely on limitations. It reflects a shift towards inclusivity and respect in discussion about disability in Indian society. So, this is the term which was given by our respected Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji. Right. So, what it refers to as Divya and Ang. Divya means divine, right, exceptional, and Ang means body or limb. Moving ahead, we have term called freak, right. So, the term freak has historically been used in derogatory or pejorative ways to describe people who deviate from societal norms, often in terms of physical appearance, behavior, or abilities. It can imply abnormalities and has been associated with negative stereotypes, particularly in the context of freak shows in the past, where people with unusual physical traits were exhibited for entertainment. You got this idea, right? So, freak has something to do with deviating from the norm, maybe physical, maybe behavior, or maybe abilities. So, sometimes you see that even jokingly people have start referring to people, freak, are you freak? Which means that you are not supposed to think in that way, you are not supposed to behave in that way. So, freak has a very, very different history altogether. Rosemary Garland Thompson has written a beautiful book on freakery, right. I would recommend you to read, and obviously when I will, when my lecture proceeds, I will not only be limited to explaining what the term freak means, but I will also go in detail to talk about what the freak is, what the cultural meaning is, how it varies from one culture to another, what is the history behind it, so on and so forth. I will be again talking about it. So, the contemporary discussion, the term is often criticized for its stigmatizing connotation and its potential to dehumanize people. So, some communities have sought to reclaim the term as a form of self-identification, embracing differences and diversity. However, its use remains sensitive and context dependent, and it is generally advisable to avoid it in favor of a more respectful language, right. And next is very extremely important term, that is a norm. Before I tell you what norm is, please read the book Enforcing Normalcy by Leonard J. Davis, right. It is a very beautiful book, and I always recommend any beginner to read this book. So, a norm refers to an accepted standard or a rule that govern behavior, beliefs, or practice within a particular group or society. Norm can be formal, such as laws and regulations, or informal, such as social customs and unwritten rules. They help to shape expectations about how people should act and interact, influencing everything from daily behavior to broader cultural values. Norms can vary significantly across different cultures and contexts. and they play a crucial role in maintaining social order and cohesion. So when people deviate from these norms, it can lead to social consequences or stigmatization. So, right, as the definition itself has explained to you, that norm has something to do with either formal or informal, sometime be used in as a informal ways. Let's say, for example, social custom, right? So, there is a norm that you should perform like this, you should behave like this, you should talk like this, you should work like this, your body should be like this. This is a norm, right? And if you deviate from the norm, then these possibilities of being disabled arises. Like impairment is also in some way or other can be called as the deviation from the norm, right? So, it is more kind of expectations where you have to meet the expectations given by the people. People expect you to do like this, to behave like this, to be like you are called dwarf. Why? Expectations, like your height should be so and so. So, this is how it goes. What is norm, right? It's basically norm is also a part of scrutinies by sociologists and cultural studies people, because it plays a very important role in maintaining social order and cohesion. Alright, and the most problematic part of this, if you deviate from the norm, it leads to stigmatization. Right, let's now know what stigma is then. Again, before we talk about stigma, there is a very famous book, Erving Goffman, you are right, is called Stigma. Right, please read that book. It's something notes on the spoiled identity, something like that. It's a very beautiful book. Please read that. So, stigma refers to the negative attitudes, belief and behaviors directed towards people or groups based on perceived differences or characteristics such as disabilities, mental health issues, race, sexual orientation or other attributes. So, this stigmatization can result in discrimination, social exclusion and marginalization, leading to significant psychological and social consequences for those affected. So, stigma often arises from misunderstanding, stereotypes and fear. It can perpetuate barrier to acceptance, support and opportunities. Efforts to reduce stigma typically focus on education, awareness and promoting empathy and understanding, aiming to create a more inclusive society. Alright. So, what I have tried to do in this lecture, I have tried to come up with certain important concepts which are often used in disability studies, and most of the time they have more cultural meaning than it looks like, it literal meaning, more than that, right? What we understand, how do we think, it's more than that. And which is why you see I recommended the book to know about one particular concept, right? Stigma I suggested you by Goffman, I suggested you for norm, Leonard G. Davis enforcing normalcy. I suggested you to read Garland Thompson on the fracas, right? So, if you see that these are not just a concept, I cannot explain you just in one lecture. They need entire 1 or 2 hours to talk about it. But since we have limitations, so I would suggest you to please read these books to understand more, because as the lecture proceeds, you will see that I will keep on referring to them in a different ways, how they are understood in disability studies. So, with this, I would like to end the lecture here. Thank you for patient listening. See you. Take care. Bye bye.